Pandora in peril. The newly elected chairman of Pandora, Baron Papanoida, is caught in a deadly political game. The Trade Federation has blockaded Pandora and suspended all commerce with the system. Isolated from the rest of the Republic, the people of Pandora are beginning to rally against the Senate, who have seemed unsympathetic to their plight. To make matters worse, Count Dooku has come forward offering aid if Pandora joins the Separatist Alliance. Chairman Papanoida has dispatched Senator Chuchi to Coruscant with the hope that she can motivate the Senate to act in favor of Pandora before Lot Dog can legitimize the blockade.
Ho! Welcome back. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tigar. Welcome to the 106th Papanoida Pulse Pistol Popping episode of Mando Vision. Our guy Tom, and thank you so much for checking out us here at this small, independent Star Wars podcast known as Mando Vision. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, as always, on social media. We are at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email this show at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, sharing the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. And if possible or so inclined, please give us those sweet 5-star reviews. They are so very essential to helping defeat the algorithm, spread the word about what we're doing here on the show, and hopefully bring new listeners into our covert so that we can all experience the joys of Star Wars together, as it should be. Well, welcome back. New listeners, welcome aboard. We're so glad that you're here for the show. We have an exciting one to get to. We're on this Season 3, Episode 4 of Star Wars The Clone Wars, Sphere of Influence. And we got a lot to talk about with this episode. But I'm going to save a lot of it for after we do the bumper, all right? So we'll give the credits, and we'll talk about the plot, and a lot of the other factors that kind of weigh in on this episode, because if you've watched this one recently, you might be like, there's something familiar about that Papanoida character. Maybe we should talk about it a little bit. I suspect you're all well aware of it. But again, we'll talk about it. We'll put it out there. Our discussion points for the episodes kind of center around that aspect of the show. I did want to give a little bit of an update, some personal life stuff, which I know I don't get into too often on the show. I think most listeners like it when I don't. But yes, there is a possibility. The possibility still looms that some shows may come out late. So please make sure you're following on social media. I will try to keep everyone updated if shows will not be dropping on Mondays and Fridays. I try to do that at least 24 hours in advance on Twitter, just to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit. Yes, indeed, it is true that this Mandalorian covert is being relocated. We have been exposed. I don't think it was Din Djarin's fault, but I can't rule it out. So this covert is relocating to another section here in San Diego. We're not moving too far away. But things we're to that point where things are going to get a little hectic. And that may mean that, as much as it pains me, there may be late episodes or possibly even skipped release days. And again, I will keep everyone posted on that via social media. So please bear with me and wish me luck, because moving is not in my wheelhouse. There's a lot of stuff in this covert, and a lot of heavy book-like items, particularly, and far too many Star Wars action figures and pop dolls. That at least they're light. The pops and the action figures are at least light. The books, oof, oh boy, that's gonna take some time. Gotta make sure I don't throw my back out on this one. So yes, that's a possibility of things to come. But more for next week. As you're listening to this episode, it is Friday. It will be out on Friday. That is a fact. That is locked in because you're listening to it, and it came out on Friday. So I say, and it is. That's how it works. But because it's Friday, it is also Disney Plus Day. There are bound to be a bevy of Star Wars related announcements, possible trailers, possible sneak peeks, announcements, hopefully official announcements. A lot of rumors swirling. We have word that the Rogue Squadron picture is being pushed back to allow Patty Jenkins more time with her current project, and for that script to develop a little bit more fully. We want a fully rounded Rogue Squadron script. So that's being pushed back. And the rumor is that a Old Republic or possibly High Republic movie will be taking its place in the schedule, which that seems to have come out of the blue. So it's been rumored for a long, long time, but maybe that's going to be an official announcement. Maybe we'll get a tease for Bad Batch Season 2. We don't know. But I suspect, and I will use the same word again because I'm fond of it at the moment. I suspect a bevy of Star Wars news will be made available to us on Friday. So in the afternoon, in the evening, look for another episode of the show to be in your feeder, or just wait till Saturday morning when you get up and it'll be there waiting for you, because I think we're going to do a bonus show, talk about all the news that does come out that day. And we're very, very excited about that because nothing is more exciting than new Star Wars stuff. More the better. Maybe they'll announce Solo 2. What do you think? Disney Plus exclusive Solo 2, 12-part miniseries. Don't tease me with a good time. All right? That's all I'm saying about that. So yes, I'd love to get to that. I'd love to get more of that. I want more Star Wars. Let's see what exciting announcements we get on Friday, for Disney Plus Day. And you already know Jungle Cruise will be on Disney Plus, and Shang-Chi will be on Disney Plus, and just so many things are coming to the service on that day. Far more than just those two that I announced. So again, big day coming up on Friday. We will be here to talk about it in the afternoon, early evening, depending on what part of the country, what part of the world you are in. So get ready. All right, so we are going to get into Season 3, Episode 4 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars right now. Sphere of Influence is the name of this one. I gotta work on that. I'm gonna get that better on the other side of the bump. But you know what you gotta do now? The most important element to the show. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
The Trade Federation is neutral in this, but Pandora must pay its debt before we can resume commerce with the system.
That is a lie. It is well known that the Trade Federation is aligned with the Separatists.
Slanderous! We are not separatists simply because we do business with them. How many times must I remind you of the Commerce Treaty of 1647? The Trade Federation is neutral.
All right, so Season 3, Episode 4, Sphere of Influence. Original air date October 1st, 2010, and our plot for this episode. When the newly elected chairman Papanoida's daughters are kidnapped, Senator Tucci and Ahsoka Tano investigate the Trade Federation, while Papanoida and his son follow a lead to Jabba's palace. Nefarious. Our director for this week's episode is Kyle Dunleavy, with writing by Katie Lucas and Stephen Melching. Katie Lucas, of course, being one of the first actors to bring the Pantorans to life on the silver screen in Star Wars Episode 3, joined by her father, George Lucas. And as far as my recollection goes, that is the first time we saw Pantorans in the quote unquote in the flesh, if you will. So we're kind of throwing it back. We're throwing it back again. Not our first time with the Pantorans. Not our first time with Senator Tucci by any stretch of the imagination. But in the first episode where we spent a lot of time with the Pantorans in the ambush episode, where we meet the prior chairman before Papanoida. We get to see a little bit more of their culture. We get to understand them as a people a little bit better, and it sort of sets up Papanoida becoming the chairman of the Pantoran people, and obviously the Clone Wars putting a strain on Pantora and its people as we kind of focus on that specific aspect of the episode, and we're going to talk about those things in greater depth in just a moment. We do have to highlight our cast this week. We have Jennifer Hale as Senator Tucci, Corey Burton as Chairman Papanoida, Seth Green himself as Ian Papanoida, Tom Kenny as Lieutenant Tan Devo, Greedo and the Trade Federation envoy, Ashley Eckstein returns as Ahsoka Tano, Nika Futterman, she stepped away from being our favorite Asajj Ventress, our favorite, Dark Jedi for hire. Ooh, or is she a Sith? No, but there can only be two. There can only be two. But Nika Futterman is Chai Ikawe. Matt Lanter is Anakin Skywalker very briefly, and a Nemoidian guard. Gideon Emery is Lot Dodd. Catherine Tabor is Padme Amidala. Kevin Michael Richardson is Jabba the Hutt. Meredith Salinger is She Anway Papanoida. Tom Kane is our narrator. Matthew Wood is Battle Droids. And of course, David Accord in the pivotal role of Rhoda. That is Rhoda the Hutt. That is right. We have a Rhoda spotting in this episode. Let's do our Jedi fortune cookie for this week. A child stolen is a hope lost. Plays right into our favorite Star Wars theme of all time, hope. And we love hope on Star Wars. It is one of our favorite things to talk about. And they do a darn fine job doing some hopey things in this episode. So yeah, we talked about it. We get a Greedo appearance in this episode. It's very interesting because in this version, Greedo speaks basic. Now, obviously, in A New Hope, spoke exclusively in, well, was it? Now I might be on the spot here. Was he speaking Rhodian or was he speaking Huttese? Ooh, that's a good question. And I just checked. It's Rhodian. So Greedo is speaking Rhodian to Han Solo in episode 4. But in this episode, speaks basic, speaks it pretty darn well. But a Greedo sighting, an early Greedo sighting. You may recall in the deleted scenes for episode 1 for A Phantom Menace, there's a deleted scene with a very young Greedo on Tatooine. This is our sort of, I guess, next canonical appearance of Greedo as a younger man, as a fledgling bounty hunter in the employ of Jabba the Hutt at this point in his career. With still a few years left before he's going to have an infamous encounter with Han Solo in a very seedy bar, a somewhat what some might call a hive of scum and villainy in Mos Eisley. But this is years before that, so kind of an up-and-comer in Jabba's bounty hunter cadre, if you will. So we get that appearance of him. Also in the background in this episode, we get Sugi and Embo. We remember them from Season 2's episode. Embo, very distinctive look with his giant metal helmet. Or not even a helmet, it's a hat. It's just a hat. But they're seen in the background of Jabba's palace. We talked a little bit. Katie Lucas, George Lucas appeared as these characters in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Now, apparently at the time, Katie Lucas's character was not exactly confirmed to be a Pantoran. There was some confusion that she might have been a Twi'lek with some sort of hood covering her head tails. But no, a Pantoran. And George Lucas as the chairman, Papanoida, makes a ton of sense. But what's interesting about this performance by Corey Burton is that he doesn't try to do like a George Lucas impression. We see Papanoida, Chairman Papanoida, if you will. We see him in the movie, and it's just a look. We just see the look. We don't hear a voice. We don't hear George Lucas's voice. We don't hear George Lucas doing an impression of a voice or trying to affectate some kind of accent to distinguish his character. No. It's a visual thing. It's just like, hey, there's George Lucas. The our Lord and Savior George Lucas is now in his movies. And again, some people think that's kind of cheesy. I kind of like it. I mean, geez Louise, you made a franchise of films that have been so important to so many people. Why not take a moment to put yourself in the background of something? It's not like you made yourself a central character. That might have been a tad too far. And then obviously bringing his children into the film in various roles has always been very interesting as well, as he was sort of cementing what he was doing with the prequels. Excuse me. So yeah, it's interesting that Corey Burton chooses to do a very different voice from what you would imagine George Lucas would sound like in this role, even if George Lucas was going to attempt to affectate some sort of accent. This Orson Welles approach that Corey Burton takes is unique. It is interesting, and not for the first time, I was a little thrown off by it, because you're seeing George Lucas's face on your screen. It's not subtle. It's right there. And I think you, like me, can hear George Lucas's voice in your minds. When he's talking, you know what George Lucas sounds like when he's talking about Star Wars, when he's talking about the process, the writing process, the directing process, the process of bringing Star Wars to life. You know exactly what George Lucas sounds like. You know his sort of tone, his sort of mannerisms, the way his speech patterns, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know how he talks. So to hear the sort of Orson Welles styled voice coming out of George Lucas's face, it was different. It was strange. I didn't dislike it by any means. I thought for a chairman that was representing an entire planet in the Galactic Republic, it made a ton of sense for it to be sort of Orwellian in a sense. And I'm using Orwellian not in the sense of 1984 George Orwell. I'm using it in like Orson Welles. So forgive me, all right. I'm changing Orwellian to Wellian. So yeah, allow me that small indulgence, if you will. Thank you very much. So yes, interesting that we're kind of calling back to characters that we just got glimpses of in episode 3, and as we talked about before, Katie Lucas, who was this character in the movie, is the co-writer on this episode, and she would have a larger role with the Clone Wars going forward as a writer too. We mentioned her when we were doing the Asajj Ventress, Quinlan Vos episodes of the show, because she had penned an arc of episodes for that abrupt, aborted sort of final season, the lost season of the Clone Wars, if you will, that ended up turning into Christy Golden's Dark Disciple novel that followed Quinlan Vos and Asajj Ventress, and sort of like the aftermath of Dooku kicking Ventress to the curb, and Voss's attempt to recruit her to assassinate Count Dooku. But this is Katie's first efforts on the series, and it's a good episode. It's really interesting in the sense that the only character we spend a chunk of time with that we know is Ahsoka Tano. We've met Senator Tucci before, but it's not a character that we know in any great depth. So there's the A storyline with Tucci and Ahsoka, and there's the B storyline with Chairman Papanoida and Ian Papanoida, as they go on this case to investigate the kidnapping of Papanoida's children, the daughters in particular. Before we get into that too much, I do want to mention, again, a Rhoda the Hutt appearance in this episode of the show. And if memory serves, this might be the last time Rhoda's actually seen on the show. I think there are a few more episodes in the work that we're coming up to where he is referenced or mentioned, but I think this might be one of the last times we actually see Rhoda the Hutt, who is his Rhoda's fate, I believe, is still very ambiguous. Like, we don't quite know what has become of Rhoda. So again, a little bit of a Star Wars mystery from the prequel era still. And maybe we'll get an answer to that one day. Maybe we won't. Much like the question we have to ask ourselves in this episode, because it is implied by Senator Tucci that she and Ahsoka have a deep, meaningful, connected friendship that we have never seen before. in Senator Tucci's prior episodes, we've not seen this. In the run of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, we will not see that develop in a storyline that takes place prior to this episode. So it's sort of again another sort of unknown mystery of the Star Wars: The Clone Wars era. If there's a comic book offshoot that explores this, please let me know. If there is a Clone Wars novelization somewhere that I've missed, let me know. But by and large, these two characters interact in this episode alone together. That's kind of how this one works. And again, I sort of dubbed them as the A storyline because that's who we start. That's who we follow. We follow on Senator Tucci at the beginning of the episode in intense senatorial debates against the Trade Federation. The Trade Federation has blockaded Pandora, much like they blockaded Naboo at the beginning of episode 1. So the Trade Federation up to many of its old tricks. Now, again, we have to talk about sort of like this nebulous nature of the Trade Federation. This episode tries, I think, to give a little bit more clarity to the status of the Trade Federation in relations to the Separatists. And it succeeds, I think, for the most part. Again, there's still some ambiguities in the episode I would like a little bit more clarity on. And again, maybe it could be something as simple as I am just forgetting a detail. It could be something as simple as like there's another offshoot of canon that I have, again, I've just sort of neglected. The synapses isn't quite firing the way I need it to recall the information. But the Trade Federation maintains that they themselves are neutral, a neutral party. Just because they're doing business with both the Separatists and the Republic does not mean they are aligned with one side or the other. They are simply the Trade Federation. They want to do trade. They want commerce. They want a taxation of trade routes, or they don't want to pay the taxation of trade routes. You know what I mean. So we once again check in with Senator Lot Dodd, who is their senatorial mouthpiece, if you will. And as the episode plays out, what's sort of highlighted more is the idea that Newt Gunray is the separatist, right? The former chairman and leader of the Trade Federation. He's the separatist, and he might have some sway over some factions within the Trade Federation, but by and large, they are still supposed to be existing as neutral, so that they can continue to do business with both sides. And as Senator Tucci insinuates, they are essentially war profiteers, because they are profiting off this war on both sides, despite the fact that Newt Gunray, their former chairman, their former leader, is clearly on the side of the separatists and clearly still has sway over a not insignificant amount of the Trade Federation. Which leads me to my next question. Oh, and I guess I should point out that Lot Dodd obviously is a facilitator of both sides of these. Like, he is there to maintain, to dissuade the Senate that there's any sort of collusion going on, but also to help facilitate whatever plans Newt Gunray and the Separatists have. So yes, very much a double-sided dealing equation for the Neimoidians and the Trade Federation by and large. But the question I come to, and that I feel like, again, I don't know, where do the Jedi draw the line between their investigations into certain aspects of this war, and where do the Coruscant security forces have to come into play? I would think that it would be a priority of someone, whether it's the Jedi or the Coruscant security force or some sort of New Republic, Republic intelligence, that maybe you would try to expose the links and the connections between the Trade Federation and the Separatists, expose them, out them, take away their business, basically, and sort of reduce them to the nothingness that Palpatine eventually will do once he takes power. He busts them down to nobodies. So again, is it the corruption of the Senate that is shielding the Trade Federation from this sort of prosecution, from this sort of investigation? I don't know. There's so many layers to all the corruption in the Republic that I do ask these questions full well, knowing full well that the answers may just be beyond my scope at this point. So yes, let's get back to our story at large. I know we're reviewing the episode a little bit differently, but that's because our A story and our B storylines are fairly unique, because, again, Ahsoka is the only character that we really, really know and have any sort of connection to. And I think by this point in Season 3, our affinity, our affection for Ahsoka is growing, but we are not full-blown Ahsoka files just yet. But we're getting closer to it. They definitely have reduced some of her annoying traits. The sort of, I don't know. I don't want to get too much into the Ahsoka aspect of. But again, by this point in Season 3, we are liking that character more and more. Our love for her is growing by this point in the show, because they've done the right things. They've sort of done a little course correction with sort of her more obnoxious traits, and we're all getting to know that character and getting to enjoy that character very, very much. So again, this blockade happens, and of course, Count Dooku is going, hey, if Pantora comes and joins the Separatists, I'll make this all go away. Again, another clear indication that the Separatists and the Trade Federation a lot closer than maybe Lot Dodd is letting the Republic think they are. But Chairman Papanoida, to his credit, refuses these unwanted advances by Count Dooku, and thus his two daughters, are kidnapped from Coruscant by a Godol and our good friend, the one and only Greedo himself. So I can't explain it But I was really delighted to see a Gotal involved in this episode, and in the next episode as well. We're getting some Gotal appearances, and I don't know why. I can't explain it. There's just something about that species that I very much enjoy. I don't know if it's just their look with the horns, their sort of goat-like speech patterns. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it to you. I just like seeing Gotals in Star Wars. So to get to see one team up with Greedo to kidnap Chairman Papanoida's daughters delighted me to no end. And that is where our action kind of our storylines, I should say, begin to split, because it's Tucci and Ahsoka who are going to go investigate the Trade Federation role in the kidnapping, because again, it's the Trade Federation's involved. I mean, there's a blockade going on. Newt Gunray. There's a past history there. And the Jedi seem to be aware. Everyone seems to be aware. The Trade Federation definitely has more leanings and more sympathies towards the Separatists. So they're going to go investigate that. Chairman Papanoida and his son, Ion, they, in their apartment, find clues indicating from a statue that was used to clock Greedo across the head and leave some of his DNA or a blood sample on it, and that it was misplaced by Greedo, that more has gone on here. So Chairman Papanoida and Ion Papanoida are going to go and investigate the Greedo connection that leads them to Tatooine and Jabba's palace. So, again, the episode's a little convenient in the sense that, okay, there's two daughters, they split them up. One will be with the Trade Federation, and one will be in the side storyline. It's not an overly complicated storyline, and because we're spending so much time with characters that we don't know, there is a sort of a disconnect for the audience and the characters. I think we're more invested in Ahsoka's avenue of investigation because we know that character. Spending time with Chairman Papanoida and Ion Papanoida is interesting, but we don't know them. We don't have a connection to them, so it's sort of a unique choice. And I sort of wonder, was this just done to sort of provide more illumination into that character, into the Papanoida character, so that when we see him for those 3 seconds in Revenge of the Sith, we're like, oh yeah, we know who that guy is. We understand his story, how the Separatists and the Trade Federation try to manipulate him and his family. I don't know for sure, but it's an interesting choice. And as I said, we've seen enough from the Pantorians to know that they are skilled warriors, skilled soldiers, if you will. And Chairman Papanoida is no different. He turns out to be quite handy with a blaster. We get to see him and his son infiltrate Jabba's palace, track down Greedo, play to Jabba's sympathies for a father looking for his missing children, as Jabba can relate to, with little Rhoda there in his lap, smushing bugs and eating them. It's all handled really, really well. I can't really knock any of it, other than I just don't have an emotional connection to those characters necessarily. The Tucci Ahsoka storyline is much more enjoyable because, again, we know Ahsoka. We know a little bit. We have spent more time with Tucci, and so we have a connection to her to a degree, and we know the Trade Federation. So those two things, and again, not like we don't know Jabba's palace, but knowing those characters a little bit more, I think justifies us spending more time with them. And listen, let's just put it out there. They find the Papanoida children. They expose the Trade Federation's role in the kidnapping, or at the very least, Newt Gunray having corruption exist within the Trade Federation. Like, the upstanding citizens, the members of the Trade Federation, they had no idea this was going on. It's gone too far, and so we will end this blockade because clearly there's something going on here that we don't understand, and the episode goes a long way to getting not a lot accomplished. In the grand scheme of things, again, the Pantora situation gets resolved. Papanoida gets his children back. So by and large, it's a bottle episode in the sense that, like, we have resolved everything that we need to resolve in this one episode. There's very little to sort of leak out and to spill into other storylines. Again, there's a sort of familiarity with Attack of the Clones. A familiarity with the Phantom Menace and Amidalia's situation, and she talks about that with Tucci. But it's a simple episode. It's easy. It's an easygoing. It's fairly fun. even though we don't know the Chairman Papanoida that well, we do get to see how handy he is with some blasters in his hand. Good shootout stuff, some decent action in the episode. I liked seeing Ahsoka and Tucci sneak around in the Trade Federation headquarters. There's a lot of imagery in there that's evocative of Attack of the Clones. Ooh, I did it again. There's a lot of imagery in there that's evocative of the Phantom Menace. When Qui-Gon and Kenobi are first on board. So you see some familiarity, some familiar locales, some familiar settings. And by and large, it's an enjoyable enough episode. And yeah, but it's pretty. It's just pretty on point. I give it a 7, a solid, rock solid 7. I could be talking to a 7.5 if you catch me in the right mood. But yeah, it's an interesting episode. We just spend a lot of time with characters that we don't have that emotional investment with. And I think that's the only knock I really have about this episode, is that I'm just not as emotionally connected, or maybe not even emotionally. I just don't have like a great understanding of Chairman Papanoida and his son, and as much as strongly as they try to connect us with them through the narration to set up the episode. We understand their plight. We've seen their plight before, so we sympathize. It's just you kind of want to see your characters. Like it might have been more interesting to see Anakin pursue the Tatooine angle, going back to Tatooine, dealing with the Hutts again. I think it could have been handled a little bit differently. It's interesting to see a chairman, again, and we have seen this from the Pantorans, so intimately involved in the action. But that does seem to be a little bit more of their people. So I understand. It just was a strange one in a sense, but again, still enjoyable, still very, very enjoyable. And again, I like kind of exploring the Trade Federation, the sort of supposed neutrality that they claim to have, even though I really think the Republic should be spending some time investigating them. Now again, Palpatine's in charge. I get it. I understand. He's probably snuffing investigations from happening into the Trade Federation. So, again, the corruption of the Senate wins the day. That's really what we're getting at here with this episode. And speaking of corruption, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about corruption on the next episode of the show as we go back to Mandalore to explore the corruption issues with them and their people. It's going to be a whole hootenanny on that episode. So yeah, again, solid enough. I think it could have been done a little bit differently. I think it could have played up a little bit more of the, again, you're going to Tatooine. I think Anakin going to Tatooine is always a very interesting story. Checking back in with him and Rhoda, Jabba, it could have been very, very interesting. It could have been very, very different. But for some reason they got into this, let's explore Chairman Papanoida for some reason. And I guess he's fine to explore. He's fine to explore. Again, handy with the pistols, and a very different chairman than the last one we saw on the ambush episode. So we're getting to know the Pantorans better, which I guess is not a bad thing at all, because they are an interesting people. One of the things I did want to mention, and we've been seeing it throughout this season so far, only being a handful of episodes in, but this episode, and we start seeing it more in the next episode. I don't know if it's a budgetary thing, or if it's just the success of the show has dictated these things, but we start seeing more character models for characters that we are familiar with. Like, we see Senator Tucci in very different outfits than we've seen her in before. We start seeing Padme in very different outfits than we've seen her in before. So, in the early seasons, in 1 and 2 in particular, a lot of character models were being recycled and used into things. It was like, well, we have this model, it's ready to go. Let's plug this in the background of this shot. Now, with the storylines, again, I think the show at this point is deemed a hit. It's doing well. They put a little bit more money into developing different character models in different outfits, different costumes, uniforms, more variety for Padme, for Senator Tucci, and in next week's episode we'll see that with Duchess Satine as well. So exciting stuff as we get to explore the fashionable side of Star Wars soon. And we may have to talk about it in the next episode, Padme and Satine and the various wardrobe changes that they go through in the next one. But yeah, that's for the next episode. In the meantime, I think that does it for this episode for Sphere of Influence. Again, 7 stars. You might be able to persuade me to 7.5 if you talk nicely and you use big words. Other than that, let's get out of here. We have so many more episodes of the Clone Wars to get into. I hope we will continue to stay on target, aka release our shows on Mondays and Fridays as we plan. But much like Darth Vader in the trench, sometimes he knocks you off course, and you got to go back and start over all over again. That's going back to the old video game. Holy smokes! Because you mess up the trench run once, you just go back and do it again. It's all good. It's all good. You got infinite times to go back and do the trench run. I digress. I thank you all so much for taking the time to download, listen, support, and share the show with all the other Mandalorians in your covert. It means the world to me that you do that you share us, you tag us on social media. I love it. It delights me, and it blows me away that people actually do it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We will continue to strive to be a source of entertainment and information for you for the remainder of the year, and maybe even into next year. We'll see how it goes. One day at a time, right? All right, you bucketheads, you take care of each other, take care of yourselves, and we will talk very, very soon. Just remember, this podcast only ends one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.